and welcome everybody to today's webinar, the Probation Experience Project, Insight from Young People and Families. So today, as we go through this webinar, please add your questions to the Q&A box so we can find them at the end when we start our Q&A portion. For this webinar, Spanish language interpretation is available by clicking on the globe at the bottom of your screen.
Para escuchar la interpretación en español, seleccione el icono del globo terráqueo con la etiqueta Interpretación en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Seleccione Español de la lista y escoja Silenciar el audio original. Si no decide silenciar el audio original, oirá el audio original en un volumen más bajo al mismo tiempo que oye la interpretación en un volumen más alto.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to get right into it. First, I will introduce myself. My name is Asia Marie Ross. I'm a youth justice strategist and artist. I'm also a core member of this Probation Experience Project. Really excited to be here, and thank you everyone for being here with us. So we'll get right into it. So as many of us probably know, probation affects more than 140,000 young people each year. It's the most common outcome for young people who've encountered the justice system. Yet 60% of young people on probation could instead be diverted away from the system to appropriate community-based supports and have better outcomes. For those that remain, probation needs to be transformed to better serve all young people and families. It needs to move away from punishment and surveillance and become a positive, holistic intervention. For some solutions on how to do that, we turn to people like myself who have experienced probation, both young people and their families. In the work of transforming youth probation, these voices are often not heard. Through the Probation Experience Project, though, we've begun to change that. So the Probation Experience Project is a research partnership that uses participatory methods to shift the purpose, culture, and practice of youth probation. Our core team included young adults who have experienced probation, caregivers of young people who have experienced probation, KC staff, staff from Child Trends, our primary research partners. We've also partnered with 6 community-based organizations across the United States, the local research partners. They hired youth researchers who have had justice system experience to survey and conduct focus groups with young people and caregivers, as well as family members of young people who have experienced probation. Together, the core team and the 6 local research partners agreed on research agenda and questions for the surveys for the focus group. Then the young researchers gathered the information together through surveys and focus groups with young people and caregivers of young people who have experienced youth probation. We ended up with 105 completed anonymous surveys and 22 focus groups with 120 participants. Child Trends compiled the findings. We worked together to interpret the findings and draw recommendations from them. And so here are some of the findings. We grouped the findings and recommendations into 5 themes that arose from the focus groups and the survey responses. Those include transforming youth probation into a positive intervention, increasing equity, navigating youth probation, strengthening support networks, and understanding the effects on families. Representatives from local research partners have joined us today to discuss our findings and recommendations for each of these themes. Transforming probation means shifting the culture and practice of probation towards an approach that supports young people's developmental needs and helps them succeed and thrive in their communities. Dante Bristol from Wichita, Kansas, will share our findings and recommendations that focus on these themes. Dante?
Hello, everybody. My name is Dante Bristow. I am a youth leader with Progeny out of Kansas. Progeny is a youth adult partnership focused on reimagining the juvenile justice system. I myself have been impacted by the system growing up with these fines and fees and probations and etc. Can you go to the first slide for me? Probation wasn't positive for most youth and families. A lot of people can say that. So we asked a lot of families and youth about experiences on probation, and few of them rated it not good. The youth rated it 43% positive, 57 not at all. Families 40, 56. We even have a youth that said, quoted, "I feel like it shouldn't be so much as a punishment because they're punishing the youth and treating them as adults." That makes sense. Can you go to the next slide for me? On this slide, probation, activities during probation. So it's lack of experiences on probation, lack of hobbies, lack of employment, lack of just education all the way around. They're treating probation as it's not for youth. Youth probation is supposed to be for youth to get better, but it's not making it better for us. So I'm going to tell you some experiences I had. So, little trying to think of the word. I'm sorry. So on probation, my experience, I couldn't find a job, but I was in school, and my probation was making me get a job. But I was trying to get into trade schools, trying to find like a trade or entrepreneurships and stuff like that. But I didn't have lack of, I didn't have no resources. I had lack of resources. I didn't have the people to help me out with these things. So once we don't have these resources, the probation tends to lead on the families and the parents. So in my situation, I couldn't pay for an ankle monitor. They wanted me to get a job, but I was in school. So if they want me to get a job and go to school, I had to pick one. So if I picked school, I couldn't pay my fines and fees, so I was going to jail. If I picked a job, then I have no education, and that could be a problem when I get older as an adult. So the things that we're lacking in the community is resources. There's no hobbies. They're making it hard for youth to get careers unless you go to jail, and that's another thing. Like trades and things are hard to find unless you go to prison. When you go to prison, they give it to you no problem. Yeah, you can get into any trade you want to, no problem, get out and be successful. But the problem is, why are we waiting to go to jail to have these trades and all these things that we can get no problem? Why are we making it so hard on the outside of jail than versus in jail? Can you go to the next slide for me, please? Listening to youth and family. A lot of the probation system aren't really taking account of what's going on in the household. They just want to throw their rules out there, and it's becoming a problem to families in the household because lack of transportation, that could be one easily. I can't go see my PO, so now I'm getting locked up because I can't make it to these meetings. My mom doesn't have a car. She's working all the time. They want me to come to these meetings, but they're not giving us a chance to even get to these meetings or help and provide to get to these meetings. They're leaving everything on the youth on these probations and the family. I say another thing could be helping the family out by listening to families. The probation officers are not listening to concerns and things like that. So we asked a bunch of family, what did they think about probation and was our officer helpful? The youth that we see in the data, it says 44% said they got a little help. They understand a little bit. But I think that 44% is not that they're understanding the numbers that it's coming with. That if you get in trouble, you're going to go do this amount of time, or you're going to be on probation for this amount of time. But they're not giving us chances to understand the language of what's going on, because a lot of these charges they're giving us, they don't tell us that, hey, this can hurt your credit. When you're 21, you're not going to be able to find a house. When you're 21, you're going to have to register for the rest of your life, and you're not going to be able to get a job. So they're hurting us more than they're helping us. And that's the problem with the system nowadays. They're about money instead of being about family. And what I say at Project, we always say we're bigger than the box we put us in, that they put us in. And that can stand out a lot because we are the future. Why are you trying to hurt the future? And with that being said, I'll pass it on back to Asia.
Thank you so much, Dante. As we now transition to the next theme, increasing equity, we know that probation affects a disproportionate number of young people and families of color, young people with disabilities, and the LGBTQIA community. Yahara from Santa Cruz County, California, will discuss our findings and recommendations about increasing equity in the probation system. Yahara.
Thank you, Asia. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Yara Maria Ayala. I also go by Yari since it's a lot easier to pronounce. I work for Community Action Board of Santa Cruz County at the Luna y Sol Familia Center, where our goal is to improve youth well-being through prevention and diversion from the juvenile justice system. We work with youth ages 12 to 17 years old and their families as well. At Luna y Sol, we offer wraparound services for youth, where we assess family basic needs. We provide educational support. We offer civic engagement opportunities to the youth. We also offer parent engagement programming. And lastly, we also offer readiness services to not only help the youth get a job, but also retain a job once they do have it. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the increasing equity portion of the presentation. In the surveys and focus groups, we wanted to hear from young people and families about how probation can do less harm and be more equitable and responsive to all young people and their families. The availability of racial, ethnically, or culturally relevant services, supports, and or resources includes having resources translated into young people's and families, until a language that young people and families speak at home, and connecting young people to role models or probation officers who hold similar identities. So people that pretty much look like the youth, right? On the surveys, fewer than half of the young people and families agreed that probation services, supports, and or resources related to their racial, ethnic, or cultural backgrounds. This also came up on focus groups. One person noted that having a probation officer from a similar background would help them feel more comfortable when talking to them. We recommend that probation staff, conditions, and services consider and respond to youth and family, racial, ethnic, or cultural backgrounds. So for example, here in Santa Cruz County, we have a lot of the youth that are, they either speak Triqui or they speak Mixteco. So maybe having those services to the family so they're able to connect and communicate and, understand everything thoroughly. Another thing was that in 5 out of 22 of the focus groups, some of the people and family members said they felt that they were treated fairly. But in 14 of the 22 focus groups, people mentioned that they were treated unfairly. They commonly described this as discrimination based on their identity. Young people and family members also identified situational and environmental factors that made the probation experience more challenging. For example, family members reported having a hard time supporting their young person because other responsibilities meant they could not attend court appearances, meetings, and services. Young people also brought up challenges with fitting probation requirements and meetings into their responsibilities, such as school and work. So we suggest that through the probation process, they ensure that probation services requirements align with youth and family schedules and responsibilities, and to also frequently collect feedback about people's access to satisfaction with probation services and conditions, analyze the information by race, ethnicity, and other social identities, and to address any inequities. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Asia.
Thank you, Yahara. Probation in the court system can be challenging to understand and get through. Yarida Estrada from Albuquerque, New Mexico, will share some of our findings and recommendations about making youth probation process easier to navigate. Yarida?
Thank you, Asia Marie. My name is Yari Estrada with La Placita Institute in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And it's a 501c3 community organization using a comprehensive, holistic, and cultural approach designed around the philosophy of La Cultura Cura, culture heals. LPI engages youth, elders, and communities to draw from their own roots and histories to express core traditional values of respect, honor, love, and family. We promote social change through transformative and intergenerational approaches focused on racial healing and equity, cultural restorative justice, traditional agriculture, social entrepreneurship, spiritual healing, family and community health, and economic self-sustainability, and finally, civic engagement and collective impact. While on probation, young people are required to participate in court proceedings and obey various rules. These may include house arrests, curfews, meeting with probation officers, participating in services and programs, drug testing, community service, and paying restitution or other fines and fees, and it's a lot. So concerns about navigating probation and the court system came up repeatedly in the focus groups and surveys. Both young people and family members said caregivers need more information about the probation process. Young people also want help to understand court processes, probation rules, and jargon, with keeping track of requirements like court dates. Focus group participants discussed probation requirements such as ankle monitors, transportation to activities, time-intensive service requirements, and restitution. These requirements often interfered with other responsibilities such as school and work, which led to violations and feelings of discouragement and frustration. We recommend providing accessible, easy to understand materials that explain probation. These should be in a variety of formats such as print, online, and video. And again, these were ideas from the young people who joined our sessions. They seem very eager to be involved in the process in restructuring this system that is currently really frustrating. So it was nice to hear their ideas and see their motivation. Next slide, please. In the surveys, only half of young people agreed that the services, supports, and resources they got during probation prepared them to succeed once it ended. And another response, about half said they learned a new skill while on probation, and even fewer reported having opportunities to explore one of their interests. For probation to enable youth to succeed in the community, youth and families in the focus groups were looking for more partnership in creating a probation plan. So kind of what I had mentioned earlier about the young people wanting to be more involved in that process. So we recommend partnering with young people in designing their probation requirements, including discussing incentives and accountability. This will enable young people to have probation plans that are more likely to set them up for success. And that is my piece, and I'll pass it back to Asia.
Thank you so much, Yarida. Yes, it's imperative that young people and families understand the system that they're navigating, because as Yarida said, that will definitely aid in the guarantee of their success. So thank you again, Yarida. So we'll now transition to strengthening support networks, which play a vital role in young people's lives, of course, and their successful completion of probation. Lakeisha Woods from Indiana served on the Probation Experience Project 14. She will share our findings and recommendations for strengthening support networks for young people on probation. Lakeisha?
Thank you, Asia Marie. Hello, everyone. My name is Lakeisha Woods, and I am a family member of a young person that was on probation. In addition to that, I have lived experience as being on probation, which was a part of my drive to be a participant in the Probation Experience Project. I am connected to Voices Corps of Indiana as a Master's of Social Work student intern, as well as I am one of 6 founding members of the co-chair of the Indianapolis Family Care Council, which is also overseen by Voices. Young people who are on probation need strong support systems, networks to help them achieve their goals, successfully complete probation, and transition into adulthood. They need individuals from a wide range of professionals such as counselors, social workers, staff of community-based organization, and other service providers. Depending on the jurisdiction, probation can play a vital role in supporting a young person's development, especially by connecting them to appropriate opportunities, services, and supports. Here's what we found and what we recommended to strengthen support networks for families on probation. Next slide. 63% of people surveyed said that while they were on probation, they were provided with helpful services, supports, and/or opportunities that they wanted and needed. The most common mentioned services included substance use treatment, mental health, and community-based diversion programs. One young person told the focus group that they learned coping skills from an individual from a community-based diversion program. We have 2 recommendations related to services that are needed. The first is partner with community-based organizations to support the success of young people on probation. The second is connect young people and their families with opportunities and supports to help them thrive. Both of the above mentioned recommendations can and will play a vital role in increasing the quality of life of a youth, which is one of the reasons why we as the Indianapolis-based Family Care Council are in the process of creating a role titled a Family Champion to help families navigate systems. Next slide. All young people, not just those on probation, need to have connections with positive role models. In the survey, 2 out of 3 young people agreed that they had at least one positive relationship that they can go to for support, advice, and/or information. In the focus group, young people talked a lot about the importance of having a mentor. Young people and family members described helpful individuals as kind, respectful people who provide guidance on how to navigate probation and the factors that lead to probation. Unfortunately, on the survey, fewer than half of the young people thought their probation officer really cared about them and their future. We recommended providing all young people on probation with access to a mentor or mental health services, in addition to their probation officers. The mentor could be a credible messenger from their community or even someone they already have a trusted relationship with who could be supportive to step in a more engaged role. We also recommended hiring and preparing probation officers to support young persons and their families to help ensure their needs are met. I can say that this is very important to have access to resource as a young individual who navigated the system as a child. I had individuals that supported me, pushed me, and that is one reason why I am able to sit here now and be supportive of the services and strengthen the family networks. Thank you, Asia Marie.
And thank you, Leticia. Excuse me. When young people are on probation, it affects their caregivers and family members as well. Miriam Arroyo from Camden, New Jersey, is going to share, and discuss our findings and recommendations related to how probation affects families. Miriam?
Thank you, Isha Marie. Hello, my name is Mahiram Arroyo. I am a family member of a young person who just completed his probation last month. Yay. I became a bilingual family support partner with the New Jersey Camden County Family Support Organization because I wanted to help families the same way I was helped during our probation time. For this project, I helped interview other family members of youth who have experienced probation. As I and other family members know, when a young person is on probation, we deal with things like probation costs, our ability to support our young person, how the system interacts with us and responds to our needs, and the stress of interacting with the confusing court and probation system. Here are some highlights from our findings and recommendations about probation effect on family. Next slide, please. In almost every focus group across the whole project, young people and family members discuss how all kinds of family members and friends supported them while they were on probation. That included providing transportation to and attending court hearings, probation meetings, programs, and services, plus covering probation costs and encouraging our young people to complete their probation requirements. In focus groups, young people and families also reported that probation staff did not consider the young person's needs or family situation or help families navigate probation process or requirements. Family focus group participants also mentioned that required meetings were often scheduled at inconvenient times that did not consider obligations such as work or childcare. As a result, young people did not receive assistance or it was delayed. A family member shared with me that they didn't have a car, so her and her child had to depend on other family members to take them to the many appointments they had as a stipulation by the judge. This parent mentioned that she had concerns about losing her job because she was missing so much work taking her child to court and the other treatment required by the probation. Next slide, please. Fines and fees are a big issue for families. When a young person is on probation, they and their families may be required to pay costs such as court fees, fees to apply for public defender, ankle monitor fees, costs for required programs or treatment, fines, child support when a young person is locked up, restitution or fee for being on probation. About half of family members surveyed said that they were required to pay a probation-related fee or cost. For most of them, it was a burden. Just over half of the families who had to pay, say they had trouble but managed to pay the fees. But almost a quarter of the families say they had to juggle between basic needs like housing, food, utilities, or transportation in order to pay the cost. Given our findings on how probation affects families, we made the following recommendations. Remove all probation and court fines and fees for young people. Create a family navigator program that guides a young person's primary supporters through the probation process and probation requirements. And partner with family members in case planning and conversations about probation requirements. We believe these changes will vastly improve the experience that young people and families have on probation. They will enable families to help their young people get back on track. One of my support parents recently mentioned that they are low income and the court fees were prohibited, especially because they had to miss so many days of work taking their child to the different appointments as part of the probation requirements, sometimes more than one appointment a week. And sometimes they spend a day in court to be postponed to a later time. They had to pay a $100 fee, and as small as it may sound for some, this made a difference in her ability to pay the lunches for the kids in her household. She makes too much money to get help from the government, but not enough to pay any extra expenses. I pass it back to you, Aisha. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As we just heard, young people and families who have experienced probation have a lot to say about what is and isn't working. The Probation Experience Project is the beginning. As we look to transform probation by both diverting young people away from the system and by changing the practices of probation itself, we need to keep listening to those who are most affected. Some of the recommendations and solutions we drew from the survey and focus groups findings can be implemented almost immediately. Others, such as removing fines and fees, may take state level legislation. We hope that you will read our report and figure out how you can use these findings to make changes. We also encourage you to keep listening to the voices of young people and families where you are. We'll share links and resources to everyone who has registered, but for right now, we have a few minutes for questions to our presenters. Please feel free to put those in the chat and the Q&A, and we'll get to as many as we can. Thank you again for being here and for your presence on today's panel.
So I'm going to chime in here for a moment while looking at the Q&As. This is Leanne Roselle from the Casey Foundation. Someone asked, was there an alternative to probation explored? That was not part of the survey and focus group questioning. However, many of the recommendations and the things that the services and supports that families and young people expressed that they were looking for can be provided to young people without them having to be on probation. So I hope that answers that particular question. So I see other questions in the Q&A about how the project built trust with young people. So I'm going to ask if one of the local research group partners might want to answer that. I know that Yohara, your program works with young people and all the programs hired youth researchers. So maybe you want to start with the answer to that.
I can take it if you want, Leanne. Hello. One thing to build trust with the young person is to listen. They felt as if their voices wasn't being heard. However, they wanted to have buy-in. They needed their own buy-in so that they can participate, and then the probation officers or the other systems could listen to them and see what their unmet needs were.
Hi, sorry about that. I was having trouble with my speaker as well. So our youth here at the center, a lot of them are referred through probation. And something that did happen was that there was communication, there was active listening, as Lakeisha mentioned, and they were advised that this would be given back to probation as feedback, so changes could be made. And just the fact that we have them here in the center and there's that active communication, the active listening and engagement makes them feel more comfortable. And then giving them that empowerment of participating in the focus groups, I feel even helped build the relationships a lot stronger. And then some of the youth researchers had already been on probation and experienced these systems. So seeing them working with us directly, I feel was also another empowering part of the program.
I see we have some questions about whether families who've been through the probation experience would be willing to act as mentors or simply as another line of support for new families trying to navigate the probation system. I think one of our two family members, or maybe both of you all, might be interested in answering that.
I'll come off and answer it first. Yes, family, that's one of the reasons why I am here. I love to work with individuals that have been system impacted, and sometimes experience can be the best teacher. And when working with families that have been through the system, it helps them to feel more comfortable working with someone who has a similar experience.
And I'm currently working for the Camden Family Support Organization because the help that I received from them was such big to us. It helped us navigate the probation system. My son gained a mentor, so I figure I wanted to give that back to the community and help all those Latino people that were out there that didn't know how to navigate the system.
Great. So someone else asked, oh, Muharrem, did you want to speak? You just did. Someone else asked what recommendations you have, and this could be anybody of the panelists, when it comes to building relationships with probation departments, to have these kinds of conversations with them.
I guess I'll take that one too. With probation officers, you want to be able to be like-minded, to have similar interests in helping individuals and families develop. And having a listening ear is very, very important when working with a probation officer. Being as I was on probation when I was younger, and as you guys can see, I'm probably not that young anymore, having that good relationship, having a positive support system, whereas your families are involved, it would help build a positive relationship with the probation officers and help keep everyone connected.
And I see that a representative of a national organization of youth defenders, that is defense attorneys, is asking, what is the most important thing a young person's defender can do to support a youth in the probation plan process?
I feel like making a connection with the family, the parents, and offering that representation and a listening ear to hear their concerns goes a long way. Because something that we did find in the focus groups was that a lot of the parents didn't feel heard by the representative. And there was also a little bit of lack of communication. So just making them feel heard and really putting attention into hearing what the family's needs are.
Yeah, I'll echo that, Yahara. That's actually exactly what I was going to say, is making sure that we're listening, but also integrating the family and the young people's supports, just being sure that there's someone there to additionally hold them accountable or provide guidance and support as they're navigating the probation plan, which can be difficult. Life happens, and being sure that there's still support in place as that process is following out.
All right, I see that there's a question about the prevalence of fines and fees. This person writes, I'm curious about the prevalence of fines and fees and what youth and families thought would be more meaningful. Anybody want to take that?
I'll take it. As I work for an organization that provides services that addresses the social determinants of health. When it comes to the fines and fees, oftentimes a lot of individuals come from low-income backgrounds. So coming from a low-income background, there is fear of not paying those fees that will that the youth feel that they will be arrested, that they don't have. And so if there is some type of program that can aid them in that, will be very, very helpful. In fact, I believe there is a program in Indiana in which the youth will volunteer. They volunteer their hours and their fees will be paid for them.
I also want to ask Dante to say a little bit about what's happening in Kansas, where there's some severe consequences that can happen when young people don't pay fines and fees. So maybe you can talk about the consequences and some of what you all are doing in Kansas to address the whole issue.
Okay. So some of the things we're doing in Kansas actually right now, sometime in the next, I want to say 3 months, we're supposed to be going to the Capitol to put in a bill to eliminate fines and fees for the youth. We actually went last year. We testified about it and everything, and it went through one part, but it didn't go through the other part. You know how I really don't get that stuff, but it went through one and it didn't go through the other one. So we're gonna push it again in a couple of months to go through, but this time we got more ammunition. We got a lot of more people coming along with this. So hopefully it pushes through, because fines and fees in Kansas, like everybody else is saying, like if you don't pay these fines and fees, they will lock you up. And they'll literally let you back out and then expect you to still pay it. And if you can't pay it, they'll just lock you right back up again. It's just a cycle, and it's ongoing, and it's constantly adding up. And like what people don't understand is, like, every time you get locked up and you got to go see a judge, that's a fine and fee. Every time you got to take a UA, that's a fine and fee. All these things are just adding up to where it was $500 like 2 weeks ago, and now you're at $900, and things just add up so quickly and fast. So we're trying to get them eliminated, because fines and fees for the youth it's no good. We're treating the youth as adults, and we shouldn't be. We should let a kid be a kid.
Thank you,
That's all.
Dante.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. So another question is asking, were you able to identify probation strategies that were helpful or that worked well for youth and families? Thinking about those who did report having a positive experience. So I know many of you all were in the focus groups and maybe heard some of those answers.
Something that a lot of the families and the youth shared was things that were helpful as far as probation was them getting referrals, having active communication, referrals to community-based organizations. So for example, a lot of them, even though they were in our focus groups, they had mentioned that our program was had assisted them a lot. Some of them were under other mental health services that they were referred to. They had expressed a lot of gratitude for that. And there are some programs here in Santa Cruz County where the youth work directly with I believe it's called a group supervisor, and they'll take them to different locations throughout the week to keep them engaged. And the youth had expressed that some of those group supervisors were very helpful in mentoring them to make better choices.
Yeah, and if I can, in additional to say that just really quickly, I do know that when we were doing the project, that as we were looking at the recommendations, it had came up that it was someone's experience that a probation officer was really hands-on with the experience of what, like, and one of our main findings of what the jargon was and what the process is of probation. On the other side of that, while a lot of families and young people reported that that wasn't their experience, some families did report that it was their experience that having a probation officer be more hands-on in the processes and in the navigating probation, also something that was effective and helpful. And you had I saw you came up off of mute.
Oh, sorry, I can continue a little bit. So we do work directly with youth who are in the youth detention center here in Albuquerque, and actually one of our youth researchers was someone that we had contacted while she was inside. And so the programming that La Placita was doing inside of the detention center was something that really sparked her interest, and not having the support from family and maybe even the system at that time, she found that La Placita was a place that she felt safe. And so even though the Probation Experience Project did bring up some trauma triggers, she had a really effective time facilitating the focus groups and just kind of owning her trauma and wanting to really hold a lot of these system stakeholders accountable, maybe some that she did not have like the best experience with, because there were other young people who had mentioned that they had a positive experience, right? But I think just having La Placita, like when she got out, was something that was very beneficial for her. And so, yeah, I just wanted to mention that as far as like the positive outlook.
Great. Mahidram, you mentioned that your child just completed probation last month. Congratulations to him. And you said that you've had, now you're helping other families. I'm wondering what was most helpful for your child and for you in getting through the process.
Well, at the beginning, the process was very frustrating because we had probation officer after probation officer. It was a lot of changes, but then one probation officer referred us to the family support organization, which is where I work for part-time now. And they were able to provide my son with a mentor, and that mentor was able to change his way of thinking. He saw a role model. He saw this Mr. Peter, who is a wonderful role model to kids. He was able to get to him and help him. And a little bit about the hobbies that each organization can offer is like they have support groups that the kids can come weekly and they meet other kids that are in similar situations as they are. And it helps them kind of work together and help each other navigate the system and create something different. Like perhaps they didn't know that they can go help somewhere, and then it's just providing different activities like go bowling or doing different things that they were not able to do because of whatever reason. Their parents maybe couldn't take them, or they didn't have the resources, they didn't know how to get there, they didn't even know that those places exist. So having the mentor and joining the family support organization was fundamental for my son change. He gave a change completely. He's a new man, basically. So this year and a half, he became a whole new man. It's like sometimes when he talked to me, I don't even know who he is. He wants to go to college, which was something that he never wanted to do before. He has a future now. And I am very grateful for mentors, all the mentors that are out there. Thank you.
Thank you. So I see some other questions. Circling back to the importance of the community-based organizations, someone asks, what do you think about the fiscal disparities? That is the funding that between probation departments and actual community organizations that are providing these services. I'll just let any of y'all jump in if you want to say something about that.
Here at La Placita, all of the services we provide to the community are free. So just making sure that we have the resources to continue to provide those resources for those who are experiencing probation or who have been impacted by the system. Fiscal disparities between probation departments and actual community organizations. Yeah, I would say just sometimes the lack of resources would be challenging because we do have a number of community members who rely on those free services. I don't know if it's the same for others, but I would say that's one of our challenges.
And I would say, I'll speak on behalf of Voices. Voices have various programs that help the community as a whole. They have a Power and Promise program that engages the youth. The Family Liberation program, it works with the family unit. They have Black Male Mental Health program and Healing Centered Reentry. restorative justice, and they have a youth media program. All of these services are to encourage youth to be successful, as well as to help them to overcome any obstacles that have been in their way. And they're free to all of the families that are receiving services at Voices.
Thank you both. I see a question here that asks about, you know, we talked earlier about the project wasn't really exploring alternatives to probation, but they would love to hear what you all think about alternatives to probation. What could have been different instead of probation, so that the young person wasn't facing all of these potential violations and entanglement with the system, but still getting their needs met?
Mentoring programs are very important. So instead of putting a kid in probation that they're doing nothing, I mean, it's just come to court, go see your probation officer once a week. It's nothing, they don't get anything out of that. But if they are with a mentor, that mentor or, some type of mentorship program that would actually do something, teach them something, will be really good for this.
Yeah, and I think another reason, like in the Probation Experience Project, we didn't really see much on alternatives because I think families and young people don't know how much people are really rallying for alternatives to incarceration, alternatives to system involvement to be the norm. And so it just makes me think, like, how are we informing families, communities, young people that there are alternatives, there is community that is, working on your behalf and that you can tap into to advocate for you. I think that, excuse me, I think that is to Mahira's point, that there are groups out there that can advocate for these youth and families to find other supports, other ways of accountability, other ways of healing, rather than to be isolated or system involved. But I think that it takes a knowing, I think that it takes a tap into the community and someone who will advocate and mentor a family and young people to be aware of that.
Anybody else want to add about what alternatives would be?
I will add, and I will add because as you guys may have heard, that Iowa system impacted many years ago. And when Iowa system impacted, there was a program in the state of Indiana called Street Law. So it was an alternative to incarceration program, or it was a program that was mandated where you went and you learned about the laws, how to navigate without the systems in a positive way. It is my belief that if something like that was brought back, it will be very impactful for families and youth. It had a positive impact on me because there's a lot of things families are unaware of. And with having that knowledge, they don't know what to do or what not to do. So something like that will be very, very helpful across the board, not just here in Indiana, but throughout the whole United States.
Thank you. Skipping around a little bit in the Q&A. Well, we talked a little bit about, someone mentioned the hobbies, which was one of the questions, how organizations are addressing access to hobbies. And I think there was a good response about, when we talk about hobbies, we're not just talking about useless things. We're talking about exposure and skills and things that young people can do with their free time. If they don't have something to do with their free time, that can be an issue. So anybody else want to talk about how you're addressing access to things that can be considered hobbies? Yes, Yari.
So a lot of organizations operate Monday through Friday. However, La Placita does offer activities to be a part of on the weekends. So we have a program called Arte, Art Rising Through Expression. So it allows youth who maybe might have the safest environment on the weekend to come here and make art, whether it's through poetry or drawing, painting, music even. And so I think providing a space for youth to be creative and maybe something that might be they want to do professionally it's nice to encourage the youth in that way. And it's pretty busy every Saturday. We have a big event to like show art later from things that they had created. And then we also have our community garden where a lot of our youth are able to grow food and grow things that they've never even heard of before, like turnips and radishes and things like that. And somehow that becomes a hobby for them too. So and can be a good skill to learn like in the professional world as well. So yeah, just providing those spaces on days that the youth may not have something safe or a place to be at. Yeah.
Yeah, I just I want to echo a lot of what Yarita was saying, right? It's hobbies is so, I feel like it's synonymous for like social activities, right? For exposure and access and opportunities, right? Like young people not even knowing what a turnip or a radish is, right? I didn't start practicing yoga until I was on probation, right? Going back to Dante's point of why are these resources not available until we're on probation or we become system involved. So hobbies just really is an umbrella of exposure, opportunities to something new, and it's important that that's accessible every day of the week. So I just want to chime in on that. Thanks.
I also want to echo what both of you all said. I think the big thing is enrichment through opportunity and through, here in Santa Cruz County, Watsonville is only about 15 minutes away from Santa Cruz. And there have been times that we've taken the youth up to go bowling or to the boardwalk, and they've been living here their whole lives and they've never been there before. So just giving them those opportunities, those enrichment opportunities and connections. We also here at the center at Luna Sol, we incorporate life skills days where we're teaching the youth how to cook, we're teaching them how to organize themselves, we teach them different life skills that sometimes, it's not taught or not passed down, or they're not things that are taught in school anymore. I mean, I know that for myself, my mom had mentioned that when she was young, they taught her how to sew at school. That's something that's not even thought of anymore. We don't even consider that anymore. You just throw your pants away and buy new ones. So we're not necessarily incorporating that because I don't know how to sew, but if I could, I definitely would pass that down, right? But just giving the youth all these other opportunities and all these life skills that are not being taught in schools anymore. And then, we also teach them, as mentioned earlier, when we first started the webinar, we have job readiness preparation where we're teaching them how to interview. We're teaching them how to not only get the job, but retain the job. Because a lot of times, we're taught like, hey, you got to go to the interview, you got to dress nice. But what do you do once you're there? How do you communicate? How do you solve problems? And one of our probation, our probation youth opportunity specialist, sorry about that. He was doing an activity with some of our youth that are currently on probation this week, and he was teaching them about trust during our life skills day. So he brought some ties and closed their eyes, and he had the other youth guiding them across the room with obstacles. So they're able to create trust amongst each other and communication. And there's all these other developmental assets that were part of that activity that was super amazing. So I just wanted to share that. And a lot of it, like I said, is, life skills and enrichment activities.
So yeah, thank you everyone so much for joining us today. We hope that you've learned more about the perspectives and experiences of young people and families and the many changes that are still needed to transform probation. We'll follow up with links to this recording as well as other resources to better understand the issues that came up in the Probation Experience Project. We hope that you all read our materials and figured out how you can use these findings and recommendations to make changes in your jurisdictions. We also encourage you to find ways to listen to the voices of young people and families where you are so that we can ensure that they will all have the best outcomes and opportunities to thrive. Thank you again so much for joining this Probation Experience Project webinar.